So when people ask me about applications of NLP in business, I usually say that there are 4 main areas. The first one is managing yourself. So we have a lot of techniques that are around goal setting and focus and managing your energy, dealing with things that don't go too well, so picking yourself up, dusting yourself down and getting on with the job. That's all about managing yourself. Then the second area is about communications. That's often the reason why people decide they want to learn NLP, because I think it's quite well known there are a lot of areas of NLP that are relevant in terms of designing communication and making communications work effectively, especially in large organisations. The third area is about modelling, which has to do with understanding the structure of a person's skill and then being able to replicate it. So that's always a useful addition to your learning and development initiatives. The fourth area is one that lots of people don't want to talk about. And it's to do with dealing with emotional baggage. Now, a lot of people say, well, emotions have no place in business, so why are we even thinking about it? And yet, if you talk to the leaders of most companies, they will say that they want people to come to work and be passionate and committed. They want people to enjoy working in their organisation. So, in other words, they want people to experience a lot of positive emotion associated with their work. And I think that if you want that, you have to also accept that from time to time, you will get some negative emotion. Now, if somebody's really committed to what they're doing, if they don't get a clear run at it or something goes wrong, they're going to be frustrated. You can't avoid that. But that's not the kind of emotional baggage I'm talking about. The sort of emotional baggage that I think is worth looking at and worth dealing with is the consequence of very significant events that happen to people. Now, of course, what I think is significant might be different from what somebody else thinks is significant. But if you look around your family and friends and workmates and think about how many people do you know who somewhere in the last 10 years have been made redundant from a job that they liked? Now, for some people, that can be quite a distressing experience. And the result of that can be that when they go to a new job, sometimes they're a little less enthusiastic about getting completely involved in the organisation because there is an anxiety that I may get completely engrossed in this company again and the same thing will happen. So there's a sort of once bitten, twice shy philosophy that comes into play. And if someone has been made redundant more than once, then sometimes you find that they're coming to work and they're not really wholehearted about it because they're always holding a little bit of themselves in reserve. Of course, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the individual because it means that they're not getting the experience of really enjoying their job and giving it everything they can. But it's also not good for the employer because it means that they've got somebody who they're not getting the absolute best out of. Now, if you think about it, there are people who've been made redundant, yes. There are also lots of people in the workforce whose organisation has done a restructure of some kind. And if you've been on the receiving end of that, and perhaps the job that you knew and loved has now changed, perhaps it's only 50% of what it used to be, and perhaps now there's an element to it that wasn't there before, that can also be quite upsetting for some people. It can be annoying, frustrating, and it can result in a reduction in performance. Sometimes, in the case of mergers and takeovers, you'll find that the resulting clash of cultures as two different organisations figure out how to work with each other can also have a massive impact on people who like the organisation they were part of and then suddenly find that they're part of a different organisation. So those are just some of the reasons why people might acquire emotional baggage as part of their work. There are others. Sometimes there are people who end up working for a boss that they just don't see eye to eye with, and that can be quite a stressful experience. Of course, it can be stressful for the boss as well. If you're the manager or leader of a team and you find that there are people in the team that you just don't relate to, don't really understand and find it quite challenging to deal with, then that can result in a certain amount of stress and emotional baggage. So I think that if we really want to get the best out of people when they come to work, I think it's important to have a means of dealing with some of that emotional baggage. Because you may not be aware of it, even if you know that something difficult happened in the past. But quite often, the amount of effort it takes to keep the lid on some of those old emotions can be seriously detracting from the amount of energy that you've got to apply to the job that you're being paid to do today. It also, of course, will mean that someone with baggage in the past will see today in the light of those unpleasant things that happened before. And that means that they're not really seeing today on today's merits and may make decisions that don't really relate to what's going on right now. They're more to do with what's happened in the past. And this, of course, is why you get the experience of going to a bunch of people and saying, right, let's do this, let's change this in this way, whatever your new introduction is. And you get people who say, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, no, we've tried that before. Oh, that didn't work. That won't work here because... And they're not really seeing the new initiative on its own merits. They're seeing it in the light of everything that went before. So this may be something that a lot of people are not that comfortable talking about in the business arena. But I think that if you really want the best out of everybody who works in your organisation, then having some means of helping people move through their baggage from the past is a really good thing to do. And of course, I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't already have means of doing that, because there are NLP techniques that help people move through some of that baggage from the past. And yes, of course, eventually people get over whatever it was that knocked them out of balance. But that can take a very long time. I've been into companies where people are still nursing grudges that are over a decade old. Imagine what kind of detriment that's having to their performance. So if there are simple methods, which there are, of helping people speed up that process so they learn from the experience, but they leave the old emotion behind, then why wouldn't you want to do that?